And we are live. What's going on, everybody in YouTube? This is your boy, Billy Rowe. Today is Tuesday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. If it is Tuesday, then you should already know by now what that means. It's time for first row Intersation. Tonight's topic being, is management for me? We're going to abbreviate that so that we have to keep saying that. It's IMFM. Is management for me? That is with my good friend. We're going to call you a friend now. Bob. Good friend, Bob McKinley. Bob, if you could say hello to the people.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm enjoying a little sunshine with the daylight savings time here in California at 7 p.m. It's still bright out.
Yeah, no, we're at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard, so it's already nighttime over here. But I want to let you guys know you're in for a treat tonight. This is Bob's actual second Intersation, and I'm noticing a trend here on leadership, management, leadership. So I hope you guys are ready to rock and roll. Really quick, a couple of things before we get started. The very, very first thing is, for those who are new to the concept of intersation, I always like to explain what that word intersation means. Intersation is simply when you take an interview and a conversation and you put them together, you get intersation. So in my life, I'm very fortunate to have a diverse network of friends, family, coworkers, acquaintances, strangers that I talk to. And our conversations that we have typically go beyond that surface level into more deep and meaningful things that promote growth. And so since I've had an abundance of these conversations in my life, one of the friends that I have, who has actually been on an Intersation and will be on one later this week, said, wouldn't it be interesting if we could record our conversations or have people be able to see these conversations and get the growth that we're getting from these conversations. Thus, the concept of Intersation was planted, and then later on, obviously, now today, it is born. So that is what Intersation is. It's an opportunity for me to open a literal lens into the conversations that I'm having with the people that I know within my network, and hopefully inspiring growth between everybody who's able to engage and be involved. So with that being said, tonight you will see Bob and I speaking back and forth visually through the video link, but this is very much an interactive conversation. If you have a question, ask it in the live chat. If you have a comment, place it in the live chat. If you just want to give a nugget or respond to something that somebody else has asked or said in the live chat, feel free to do so. It's about being interactive, and so I really look forward to bringing some of the contents or some of the comments that are happening in the live chat into tonight's conversation to help kind of guide that conversation along. So with that, as always, for those who are the veterans, we'll call, of the Intersation realm, we like to jump straight into it. Again, tonight's topic, I'm going to abbreviate it. IMFM, is management for me? You might think it is, but we'll see what you think towards the end or at the end of this Intersation, if you still feel like it's for you or not. So with that, let's get started. Let's jump straight in. Bob, could you actually take a moment to introduce yourself briefly for those who were not privy to your first Intersation on the first row?
Sure, Bill. Thanks for having me on again. I try to keep your tradition going on with a little bit of a hook for the name, since there's a play on words in many of your shows. And the whole aspect of IMFM will come up in a little bit when we talk a little bit about it. But as Bill said, I am Bob McKinley. I had the chance to work with Bill really over the course of the last 4 years or so, prior to his move to Comcast and prior to me leaving the current organization. My career has been in management and in leadership positions really since I was a young man. I spent 28 years on the East Coast, as you can tell from my accent. And, I worked for one of the national shipping giants, $69 billion corporation today, the one that does not wear brown, if that helps you. And for the last, for 4 years, I've been out here in California working for a regional carrier as well. So my management leadership career has been in that in the package information shipping world. But I've had the pleasure of really being in a leadership role since I was about 20 years old. Without the title, became a manager when I was 22 and worked my way through. And then I ended up out in California for a great opportunity and to give my family a chance to see another part of the country. I'm excited to be on this today to talk about this particular topic because I had the pleasure of teaching this course, for the better part of a decade. The company that I was with had a very big promotion from within policy. So when you do that, you want to find the best of the best from within your own company and give them a chance to grow. And this class was very, very informative on both sides. It was really I didn't teach one that I didn't learn something on, but it was great to see the folks that were in there because it was on their own time. They had to come in on their own time that show that commitment, and it really opened up the eyes and their lens of what management really is. Because many of them came in under the premise that if they looked at their current boss and said, if he or she can do it, I certainly can. But they just had a certain perception. They didn't really understand what that role was. They only knew their boss.
Right.
And in this particular class, the number was pretty staggering. It was 83% of people that took this class, IMFM is management for me, decided it was not for them. And that's actually a great thing. That's a good thing, right?
That's an actual success ratio right there.
Yeah, because you don't want people set up for failure, right? We all know examples of the person that was the best programmer, the best driver, the best admin person who became a manager and failed, right? Because they were good at what they could do, but they weren't good at leading people. And within an hour or two of this class, and it was a 6 to 7 hour class that I taught, depending on the size, I really switched it to is leadership for me, right? Because that's really what it's about, right? And that's what we're going to spend some time, on the next hour, hopefully talking about.
All right. Well, then, like I said, I told you guys he has a big background in leadership and management. So I'm actually happy to bring this. Normally I don't do this, but this is the type of content that when I first started First Row, that I overall envisioned being. I guess what I should say, when I launched the First Row YouTube channel, this is what I envisioned, like being able to bring things to people that are going to help them grow in the sense of not just finances, not just their personal life, not just dating, but really as their career shapes and they mold what direction they want to go, asking themselves. And one of the notes that is here from our interactions is really asking ourselves, how can we reflect more deeply about the directions that we're going and be more intentional in the direction or the path that we're taking when it comes to corporate America, when it comes to being an entrepreneur, when it comes to being a leader. So no, I'm excited about this content. It looks like Mark Anthony is already here. I'm going to give Mark Anthony, I got to come up with like a rewards program or something, because Mark Anthony is like the first one in the chat live almost every time. Whenever he's watching live, he's like, I'm here. Let's go. He says, really quick, he says to you, hey, Bob, I'm a first-year salaried manager with a team of 9 under me. I'm an introvert. What can I do to turn the extrovert switch when needed? We're going to come back to that, but I definitely want you to be thinking about the answer to that question, Bob.
Absolutely.
So as with every Intersation, I like to start off with the same first question just to kind of get the juices flowing. With the topic IMFM, what does that topic mean to you? Not as the teaching instruction, but personally, what does it mean to you?
Mm-hmm. And I am going to put a little twist to that, because there's 2 audiences that we thought about when I thought about doing this program with you today, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, from a personal standpoint, it is, is management really what I think it is, right? Is it what I see? Is it what I do? Is it all of those in there, right? Right. And I've noticed, it's tough to do it without the teacher mode on it, because I've done that class so many times, that the perception of it is very, very different. And for today's topic and discussion, I thought about it in twofold, because many of the folks watching either live or on the video replay are in management positions. They're looking for personal growth. The question you were just asked is one about personal growth, right? In the chat. So in many cases, the answer, yeah, management is there for many of your viewers right now. But the flip side of that is it will help them understand that next step for their people that are working for them, right? And is management for them? And I don't want to get into us versus them, but A, it's a personal choice, and B, to grow the folks that work underneath you, it's a. I hope it will spread a little bit of ideas of what to talk about to them before they're ready to make that next step. Because even though I gave a stat of the 83%, didn't mean these folks didn't continue to grow or find different positions within the company that help them become different people. We're always looking for growth.
Yeah, no, you're right. We are looking for growth, and it's funny because when you talk about not only is management for me, but as the manager or the leader, is management for the people that I'm leading, and really trying to identify those qualities and those characteristics that transfer well into management. It reminds me of the Wednesday Word. I think I did it maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago on what's the forecast, like having the foresight to look and say, hey, there's some skill sets that this person who's underneath me has, and I really hate to use the word underneath me, but this person who reports to me has, that I could foster and help to grow. And forecasting to see where you can see them at in the future helps you really intentionally give them those stretch assignments that are going to make them more have a stronger business acumen, that are going to give them the tools that they need when they do make that decision, if management is for them, to be able to successfully navigate those waters and have the ability to come back and say, hey, I struggled on that one. I didn't knock the home run that I thought I was going to knock, but here's what I learned. And so now I need to keep my eye on the prize a little stronger. I need to keep my eye on the pitcher and be aware of the signs that are going to be coming down the plate or down the pipe, so I know when to swing and how to hit the ball with enough kinetic energy to send it back over the fence with a home run. And that's whether it's on ideas or in promotions or in just overall professional development. So I'm very much where you are when is management for me. Just because you may be a good manager in your personal life, it doesn't necessarily transition over into the professional life. And I think that can be because of the difference. There shouldn't be a difference, but the difference in how people typically approach people and talk to people in their personal life versus the structure that comes in being in corporate America, and how you have to really cross your T's and dot your I's in a completely different way, not only to protect yourself, but to protect that individual as well. So we're off to a good start, but now it's time to take the gloves off. I hope you guys are ready. Brother Gab, welcome to the chat. Thank you. Appreciate you for putting that in there. If you have not liked or subscribed, please do so right now. Says so, Brother Gab Talk Media. But my next question that I have for you is really the word manager to me is a title. It'd be like being the heavyweight champion of the world. That is a title. However, you have not fought everybody in the world. Thus, you're the heavyweight champion of whatever sport you're in. For you, what does it mean beyond the title of manager? What does it mean to you to be a manager?
When you look at the title itself, and on the last time we had a chance to share ideas and whatnot on here, we talked a lot about titles not meaning a lot to either one of us, right? It's really about the person. So you can get promoted to being a manager. You cannot get promoted to being a leader. You get that promotion, you got the job, and you earn it, hard work and whatnot to be that manager, but you really have to earn the title of leader, right? And that comes once you build up some trust and some credibility. You don't get that on day one, despite your new business card saying it's Bob the manager. And there's a lot of differences in there of what and we'll spend some time talking about the manager versus the leader, because they're really distinct items.
Right.
The first aspect of this, though, I think that we've got to think about, and if I'm going to stay true to my thought process here, is talk about the perception versus reality of what a manager is. And we'll go back to that, the stats on the class, right? Most come in there with this mindset that a manager is what I see every day or who I interact with he or she. And then they leave with a little bit of a different take. if they've come to, if they've come in on a Saturday on their own time, they generally want to, they really do want to make a difference in their own careers, right? Make
Right.
that decision one way or another. I had the luxury of, in that class, of showing a video that would give our the audience a chance to really talk about perceptions. We don't have that, obviously, in this venue. First of all, I don't have the rights to the video. I'd ask you to flip a couple of logos up there for you to do that while I'm, kind of talking about this next perception.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the aspects that we talked about, and we opened up, the class, and when I wanted to kind of get everybody thinking about here is, what do we see? The perception and the reality, right? So, this may seem like a silly one, and if you already know the answer, it will jump at you. But here are two logos, and there are plenty of other ones out there that have hidden messages behind them. So as I'm talking, and Billy fills in his little bit in the live chat, if you tell us what you see. Like you see a logo for Baskin Robbins. You see a logo for the Bronx Zoo. What else do you see? And when we talk about the differences between a manager and a leader, that really jumps at me. Of what are you really seeing? You're seeing a manager, right? Someone that is charged with producing order, right? Following rules and following a program. And I'll look at a leader, and they're really charged with producing change, right? A manager looks to achieve consistency, if you will. A leader looks to achieve a vision and really get people on board. So as we look at these two logos, is there anything that jumps at you, right? And it's funny, I've seen these in different versions, and the Baskin Robbins is not an East Coast chain, or it's not prevalent, at least not in New England, and I never noticed it, until I actually saw this presentation when I was doing something for for these classes. So if you look closely at the Baskin Robbins logo, what are they famous for? 31 flavors, right? So right there, smack in the middle of the B and the R is the number 31. Small, subtle, but it helps their brand. I used the other one for the Bronx Zoo because I thought it was another one that caught my eye, and I didn't notice it at first. I'm seeing pictures of giraffes and birds, right? Right in front of me, though, was something else. Right? The skyline of New York, or a version of it, in between the legs. So when we look at, it's right in front of us. We see it every day. Maybe not these, but we see other things every day. It really gets you to think about what perceptions do we have of ourselves? What perceptions do people have for us? So Bill, you can go back to the live view. I just wanted to show those as a quick hit.
I'm back.
Okay. So so the purpose of that is really just to give you an idea of ways to get people to think creatively and to look at things differently, but to really get you to think, what is the perception? What perception do you have of your manager, right? And the goal for this particular class and for today's conversations is a little bit different, because if you're in a leadership role already, you have a different perception than maybe the folks that work for you. But to understand the perception that they may have of you is real important, right? I mean, because as much as you may want to do it, right, what you say and what they hear can be very different. What you present and what they see can be very, very different. So as I'm going through not only these classes, but years of management experience with people, and you see the interaction, when people look and hear one thing and you're trying to get a different message, there's a big disconnect. So to be very, very successful, you have to figure out a way to make sure that perception and the reality of what you're hoping to convey as that leader, and what you're truly conveying and what they're seeing is pretty close to the same. When we look, I guess back to the original question, Bill, about management, and what do you think when you think of a manager? I think of a manager sometimes as a taskmaster, right? Someone that has the checklist and wants to get that done. But a leader, is also using that same checklist and getting things done through people, right?
Mm.
A very subtle difference, but the aspect of getting somebody to want to be part of it versus just being the one to to give the orders, right? I can tell somebody what to do and how to do it, or I can try to motivate them, right? A manager, part of the role of management is controlling activities.
Right.
And a manager controls, and that same leader motivates.
True. So, question, because you spoke a lot before you went from the controls to motivates. You spoke a lot about the perception versus reality. And I mean, this can happen in multiple areas of life where our perception of reality becomes skewed. Why do you think that in the class that you taught when you were teaching IMFM, why do you feel that 80% of the class probably came in with one perspective and left with a different perspective? They probably came in with the sense of, hey, I'm doing this extra. I wouldn't foresee an employee saying, let me go and spend some of my personal time to go to this management class if they weren't interested in management. But then to go to the class and be like, yeah, I'm not interested in that. Why do you feel that perception, or why do you think the perception of management is one thing, but then when people start experiencing the reality of it, they find out that it's another? What do you think skews that perception of our perception of management?
With that particular example, I think part of it came down throughout the day, we talk about examples of life as a manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of the perceived rewards, which we can kind of go over a little bit of those, the perceived frustrations, and then what really comes down to understanding how those really balance out, right? I mean, there were people that were, plenty of folks that come in there said, I'm gonna make a lot more money like my manager does.
Right.
Right. They come in there for the wrong reasons, right? Because again, I would talk to them saying, "Oh, wait a minute. Sometimes you want to break that down to an hourly rate, you think it might be,
right?"
And people didn't quite understand how that would play out. But the big aspect is we would also give them some things to think about and things to look at over the course of the next couple of weeks to really view with a different lens, right?
Right.
Look at this and say, okay, you thought it was just somebody telling you what to do and going back into your office. Here are some of the tasks that a manager must do every day, week, month, that you don't see because you really aren't going to be privy to documenting an employee about behavior, right? Confronting all the problems, going through conflict management and things along those lines, and talking about all the challenges, right? Many of these folks came in kind of wide-eyed, right, and didn't really understand what it takes to manage people, right? They manage themselves well. At least they think they do, right?
Exactly.
In many cases they do, right? But sometimes they maybe not as well as they think.
Right.
We talked a lot, and I've seen a lot, and outside of this class as well, of managers that have to learn the fact that your results and your success as a manager do not fall, you got to look past just the mirror, right? You go as an individual, you can make it happen all by yourself, right? You can work as hard as you can be the best, again, programmer, you can be the best driver, you can have all these best practices and you knock it out of the park. That doesn't really work when you're the manager anymore because your people have to do it.
Right. Does it translate?
Yeah, and when you look at that work group now, all of a sudden of 20 people, right, you're going to try 20 different things sometimes to get them to do the same thing that you do instinctively.
Right.
So the challenges that come in, right? So, again, what are some of the commonly identified rewards, right? Status, right? The title, right? People think, oh, I'm the manager now, so I have made it, right?
Right.
I'm not going to have to work as hard, right? Which may be the case depending on where you are physically, right?
True.
I'll give you my background, right? It's been in the transportation distribution world, and it is it's less physical to be behind a desk or to work a sort than it is to be in a truck every day, right?
Correct.
But the toll taken on you mentally, because your results and your success are now spread out over 20 people's hopes and desires versus just your own. can be a challenge. It can be very rewarding when you're successful too, right? So I mean, that's a perceived one, but it's also a real one. Helping employees grow, right? I mean, if you want to be a manager and a leader, that better be part of it if you want to be successful.
Right.
The frustrations that it takes a little while. And why did so many people eventually not want to get involved? As they realized what some of those frustrations would be, right? Working longer hours than they really see, right? The fact that when you, for lack of a better word, punch out, or whatever your clock out process might be, is you're never really off the clock when you're in management.
No.
You may be getting phone calls. You will be getting phone calls. You'll be getting texts. You will be getting all of those things outside of the normal working hours, right?
Right.
There's politics involved. You got to be able to manage up. You got to be able to manage your boss. You got to be able to manage the folks that work with you. You got to be able to manage peers. It's a bunch of different aspects of it. So the biggest aspect is for folks to try to understand and see that it's not as easy as it may look, from the naked eye, and that's really one of the aspects that that we try. This class, the class is one aspect of it. The class got me thinking about this topic for you. I don't want it to be all about the class, but talking about it with folks that have worked for me in growth. I mean, to be a manager, you follow what's told, right? A new corporate change is coming. We will do this starting on this date, right? I'm going to tell you, right? But if I understand why behind that, I'm going to give you the real reasons and get you involved. Try to motivate you on the changes, right? A manager and a leader, there has to be some tension, right? There has to be some tension out there, because if otherwise it would be play, not work, right? I mean, you've got to. There's something out there that has to be a goal, right? So there's always going to be tension, right? Tension in the sense that you have a profit or you have a growth goal. You have a short-term goal or you have a long-term goal, right? There's always going to be those tensions. And, well, why are we doing this now? Why am I losing hours today? Well, because we want the company to be here tomorrow, right?
Right. Exactly.
Those
are hard sells to sell from the management perspective. It's easy to be on the sitting part of that conversation and say, okay, I don't like how this message is coming to me. But it's different to be the person who has to present that message and say, hey, for the betterment of the organization and keep the organization alive, which keeps us all employed, these are the difficult choices we're going to have to make. And it's interesting because I feel like that plays a part in that skewing of reality and that perception where, you see, oh, well, they're cutting hours. Why are they cutting hours when, Billy and Bob, they don't even really carry their weight. They could just get rid of them and not have to cut everybody else's hours, because I can see that as a frontline employee on the ground level. That's because I have a different perspective. But when you're up higher and you're like, okay, yeah, we can get rid of Billy and Bob in our minds if we knew about that. But overall, getting rid of Billy and Bob doesn't address maybe a deeper, more impactful circumstance that we need to solve as the managers and leaders of the organization. So I feel like what you're talking about has that ability to skew our perceptive, where we'll sit back from the audience perspective and say, oh, I can do that. It's almost like if somebody was like, jumped on the YouTube channel, was like, hey, Billy, you need to bring me in because I can do this way better than you. And then they start realizing like, oh, so you can wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning when the video camera is not rolling, and you can foster relationships and network with people and delegate activities and stay organized. You can do all of that because all they see is one slice of the entire picture. And so it's hard to create what it is you're seeing with just a sliver of the image. This is like an hour of time that takes about 5 to 6 to maybe sometimes 8 hours of time to create. So I agree with you on that one.
And that example that you just gave was a great one, right? So we have Billy and Bob aren't pulling their weight. Well, they're not privy to the fact that Billy's got a family issue going on, and someone might be deathly ill in their family, and Bob has a disability that they have no right to know, right? So the certain aspects that that folks would never know sitting in the seat across the table. But you now have to manage that, and you can't tell them, and that's the other difficult aspect of it.
Right.
And if Bob is just a slug, you can't even tell him that, hey, he's deep into performance improvement, and maybe he won't be here in 6 weeks.
Right.
I can't tell you that, and that becomes the biggest aspect is people want to be upfront and honest, but they can't share certain things with it, and that's the whole purpose of getting folks to understand it and seeing that perception and understanding what it takes, and for a smaller company, sometimes it just means the difference of somebody going and spending a day in the life, right?
Right.
If they can tag along, right, and shadow somebody, and they'll go, whoa, and again, there's certain things they probably can't come in on, but if they could do that, and catch 80% of the day, they may go, whoa, that really wasn't what I thought,
Right. I actually had that experience from the perspective of a cost analyst when I was looking at routes and saying, okay, so it's X amount of miles. And in my mind, as a person who commutes to and from work, I'm like, I got a good sense of how long it takes to drive miles. And then when you say, okay, let's go out to the hub and do a couple of routes, and they put you in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, okay, yeah, this is a lot of open road, but there's no easy way. Like, you might go into a location, deliver a package, come all the way back out and around to get to the main road to go back up to the other side to deliver the next package. So yeah, the map may say that they're 2 miles apart or 4 miles apart, but the drive actually says they're 10 miles apart. Or the windiness of the road. I'm like, I'm not a speed racer in the mountains. I'm not trying to go over any cliffs. So when you see that wind and that, you have to slow down, it's not driving at 80 miles an hour from point A to point B. And so those are the things, like you said, when you are able to walk a mile in those shoes, when you're able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, the perceptions that you had unjustly or just, whether you feel it unjust or just, that you had, they become more connected to what the reality of the situation is. So I agree with that.
And that perception and reality does work on both ends, right? In many cases, not all, but most cases, a lot of times the person promoted has come from doing the job. So
Right.
they do understand, a big portion of that perception. Now they have to flip the switch on the other side. The person that wants to be that manager that hasn't done it really has no idea what's on that other side except for what they think, right? How easy it is or whatever else. And the task aspect of it, right? Again, programming, delivering, whatever it might be. I'm not minimizing the skill set in that, but you can take care of that yourself, self-teach, take a course, do some tutorials. Right? To be a manager, you can do a lot of the same stuff, but it really takes that live action with people and how you interact and how you react.
Right.
Especially new managers.
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit, especially who?
Okay, new managers will get tested, right?
Correct.
And really, as you move into any job, you'll get tested, but new managers especially. And how those reactions first come down, because again, it's new to the manager too.
Right. It's new to both parties, especially when you're like you said, when you're a new manager, people want to find out what their boundaries are. They want to see what your responses are. It's no different. I mean, honestly, almost being a manager, and it's not to belittle the people under the manager. Being a manager is like being a parent. You can't manage two people the same way because they're different people. You can have broad guidelines, broad scope of responsibilities, but just like I have 3 sons, so I have all 3 boys, and they're all different ages. They're all different. The way I have to interact with them is different. And it's not just because of their difference in age, it's because their difference in personality, it's their difference in how they perceive or receive information, and the difference in how they execute, and the difference in their actual abilities. Like, I feel like with my oldest son, for instance, he went to a private school, private kindergarten, private preschool, and then went into public school. So he had a really good foundation on education and speaking properly and articulating thoughts, whereas my second son went to an in-home daycare, and there wasn't a lot of structure and there wasn't a lot of curriculum like in my older son's daycare experience. And so now with our third son, it was like, okay, you're going to a private daycare, or where you can get the necessary base foundation fundamentals that will help you in communication, that will help you in achieving and being thriving to be successful in your journey through education and hopefully through life. So I agree with you. It's you're managing that expectation up and you're managing that expectation down, but no two employees are alike. Everybody's situation is unique to them.
And one of the key aspects that we would talk about to get people to really see that is, someone would always, I never had a plant that someone always would give me that example of Billy and Bob not performing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They would always come in, and my manager's not doing anything about it, right?
Right.
So I said, okay, well, tell me what they're not doing, and they would give the example of what they weren't doing. And I said, okay, that's me. I'm Billy. Come on up. Put him up in the front of the room. I need you to coach me and tell me what I'm doing wrong and how are you going to handle it. And, it put him on the spot a little bit, but the point of it was sitting down with that person and giving them feedback constructively and in a way that they're going to take it the right way is not easy, right?
Right.
And anybody that's managed anybody knows that, right? I mean, to your point, when you get a work group, kids or whatever it might be, you have to understand what makes them tick, and you have to give feedback. Again, you just did a recent Intersations with that, right? With Antoine Wade, right? Applying feedback.
Correct.
Right? Anybody that wants to be a leader or a manager or is thinking about it, should watch that, because that's a critical aspect of it, right? And it applies in life too. It's not just the business world, right?
Right.
I think we brought up a scenario of coming home after a long day and giving some feedback, or this wasn't the time, right? But the feedback mechanism and the conflict management aspect of a manager, many people really underestimate until they get into that role, or they underestimate how much time someone spends doing that as a manager.
Right. One of the let me jump back. I want to jump back because the chat is moving, and I do not want to neglect anybody's question. So when we started off, Mark Anthony actually had a question for you, and you've had ample time to think about it now. So he says, "I'm an introvert. What can I do to turn on the extrovert switch when needed?" Because he has a team of 9 people that he manages.
All right, like any skill that you want to work on, it's practice, right? So it may start out with if you're going to do a group meeting, you try to utilize a couple of different venues, whether it's a presentation format, whether it's a quick video that explains or shows some things that you want to do, trying to utilize a couple of different elements into your style. So if you're able to find a 5-minute appropriate video for your group, right? You can get that going. That's not you, but it starts with your style, right? So you're able to show a 5-minute aspect about time management, right? Or there's actually there's a hilarious one on there. If I can think of it, Billy, I'll send it to you, about corporate conference calls.
Oh yeah.
How ridiculous they are, right? And this particular little vignette is spot on, right? I mean,
right.
It nails the corporate conference call, right? And that's a way to use something like that, if it's appropriate, to break through some of that. The other aspect is with a group of 9 is to get out and do some of that shadowing, right? Trying to start to get to know that group a little bit more one-on-one. Maybe it's lunch with 3 of them at a time, and start breaking out slowly, right? As a manager, the introvert part of it is tough, because you do have to be able to, communicate. You have to be able to address issues, and you want some of your personality to come out. So in that instance, it's small bites, right? Like anything else, right? You find a way to, if you're doing a weekly meeting, monthly meeting, quarterly meeting, some portion of that with some other venue that may even show your personality.
Right.
You'll grow. That was Mark, right? That asked that. You'll grow with that when you break out of that comfort zone, and you can't flip a switch and become this great extrovert, this big extrovert, and you don't need to be. I mean, introverts are very successful and can manage people, but you find ways to break through with a little bit of practice and some small steps on ways to get folks involved. And it may even mean if you're doing a presentation in front of the group, getting one of the group members to co-facilitate that with you. If the
Right.
two of you doing it together, that gives you a break a little bit. Sort of kind of like what's happening with Billy and I right here, right? As we're doing this, we're talking. He's coming in, gives me a second to catch my breath. As an introvert manager, that can play a little bit of a role too. That can help.
Right.
I'll tell you, when I first became a manager, I was okay talking in front of people. I would, every now and then you'd be nervous, but I'd get up there and I'd do my meetings. I had a habit of doing this. I didn't even know I was doing it, right? I just started kind of rubbing my right. And it's the proverbial coins in the pocket. And I caught myself doing it. So I actually went to one of the folks that worked for me and I said, do me a favor. If I am doing that, give me a sign, So I'm doing the meetings and all of a sudden I'd see, she would put up her arm and I'd go, and I'd be talking and I'd be like, oh, but it also showed that you're human too, right? But I mean, it took me asking for some help from someone that was in my audience frequently to give me that little bit of a cue, because I didn't even realize I was doing it, and it was distracting as all get out for the folks in the audience.
Right. Yeah. I've had some of those things in phone conversation where I forget what word it is. I'm glad I actually to the point where I had forgotten what word it was. But I used to, whenever I had dead space in my head and try to move to the next thought, I would say something. Ooh, I'm so glad I can't remember the word. But I would say something that would fill it, this space, and it was the same thing every time. And it was like I would say it even when it wasn't relevant to the conversation. And I had somebody like, "Hey, you say this a lot, and you might want to work to not say that because it becomes distracting at some point." I want to bring the rest of the chat in really quick to get us up to speed. It looks like there was a post from Brian Senior, and so I know this is in regards to being a salary employee. He said, "Nope, on the clock, days, nights, and weekends." And yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I think a couple weekends ago, I had just woken up and I was like, it's Saturday. I'm just going to kind of chill in the bed for a bit. And then I got a text message from my boss's boss saying, "Hey, we need to find out why this system is not working properly. Can you guys get online?" I didn't have my laptop, so I had to go and get my laptop, get into the system and start looking and then start monitoring on a Saturday. And it's interesting from, again, I really want to stay in this perception and reality vein, from the perception of when you're a salary employee and you may go home early and not use vacation time or whatever it may be. People are, "Oh, you're lucky. You're not on a clock. You're lucky. You're lucky. You're lucky." But on that Saturday morning while everybody else is asleep and your phone is going off with work tasks that you need to accomplish, nobody's there to say you're lucky. So definitely no days off when you're a salary employee.
In that 24/7 world, and in some ways it does work, right? Because you can go maybe catch a game, but you're also going to be that parent that just missed the kid's big swing or whatever because you're on your phone, right?
Right.
It's that catch-22,
Yeah.
And I would say that the manager walks out after that 8-hour, 9-hour, 10-hour day and disconnects to a degree. The leader never does, because again, you're always going to get pulled back in. There's got to be some balance. You've got to be able to do it. But I worked in the distribution business my entire life. When I ran a facility, I was one of the last ones to leave on Christmas Eve. I didn't go out and deliver that day. And they're saying, "Well, what are you doing here? Why are you waiting?" I stayed until just about the last person was back. Right? I could have left at noon. Right? My day was done, except for monitoring and having folks watch it. But I would generally make sure they would understand and and see the appreciation of work until Christmas Eve until that last package was delivered.
Right.
And choices can be made too. I mean, you can be that manager, or you can be the leader.
Let's see. It looks like Mark Anthony also says, he says, "I love this must be from not knowing what's going on behind the scenes. I love when entry-level employees think that they know what's up. It's easy to try to call the shots when you're not actually in charge. There's no repercussions from that." Brother Moses says, "Professional hazing is a normal phase of acclimation." I asked him to expand on that. He says, "Managers and new hires alike have to prove themselves to the old guard. And then Mark Anthony said, "Thank you, Bob, for answering the question in regards to the introvert versus extrovert switch."
Yeah, no, and hazing is the word, right? It's a tough one out there, right? And you will be challenged, right?
Right.
It's funny. I when I first became a manager, I was a manager as a young man, right? 22 years old. And I had a woman come up to me after we worked together for 2 or 3 weeks. She was on the sort, and she just was chewing nails. I don't know what the issue was. And she said, "I just got to say something." She said, how in the world is a 22-year-old kid going to be able to understand the challenges I face as a working mom with 3 kids?
Mm.
So my response was something along the lines of, well, we're working together from 6 to 10 p.m., right? That's your shift, right? You do a great job. I've watched you for 2 weeks. I'm pretty impressed. Hopefully, after you work with me a little bit longer, you'll be impressed with what I do for you as it's needed, right? 20 years later, I'm leaving and moving to California. I got an email from her saying, and all it was not bad for a 22-year-old kid.
Right.
Because again, it was her, and she wasn't necessarily hazing, but she, because it was just one-on-one, right? Typically, that challenge and that push that was talked about in the chat is usually a little bit more public,
right?
So that somebody can sit there and try to embarrass or whatever, And my take on that when it happens is just calm, cool, and collected, man. Reacting and responding, you've lost. That's what they're looking for. Calm, cool, and collected, and the success will happen.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I want to try to transition. Wow, time is super flying. It's 8:47 out here, 7:47 for you. I want to transition a little bit to start to differentiate the difference between the manager or management mentality versus the leadership mentality. Well, maybe for you, I think I know for you they're different, but so instead of asking you, are they different? I kind of want to know from your perspective, what are the differences between being a manager and a leader? And maybe also, what are some of the similarities as well?
When I look at the differences first, right? And a manager can grow into be a leader for sure, right? Absolutely. You in many ways have to understand what you're doing first, right? Before you can really excel at the next aspect of it. But again, when we talk about a manager does the basic aspects, right? Directs and controls people, right? Sets a plan, right? Well, a manager sets a plan. When they become leaders, they set the vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that plan's not just about today or tomorrow or this week, right? It's we're changing this week so that down the road, a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, it's going to mean this. So they're connecting the dots, right? They're not just managing the process, right? I mean, think back to the videos or the shows of our parents in the assembly line, right? Everyone's just doing the same thing, but they don't know what roles connect.
Right.
I'll go back to that the woman that challenged me to being a 22-year-old manager. She was really good at what she did. She handled a small package sort. She just sorted letters.
Okay.
3 months into it, I told her she's going to start doing some other things within the facility during that shift, so that she, because I said, you're really good at what you do. I need that same expertise and some different aspects of it. And she was very reluctant. I've been doing this for 4 years, blah blah, however long it was, and she didn't want to do it. So we started off with 3 days a week, and then by the end she could do every job in that building and loved it even more so because she loved the variety. Right? A manager would not have done that, because she did great at what she did. I'm going to leave her alone. Not going to upset that apple cart. Don't fix what's not broken. Looking for different ways. The manager dictates and tells someone what to do. We talked about it earlier. The leader motivates. And how? Well, they get to know their people, get to understand what what they want to end up. What are some of their what pushes them? What gets them going? And you really have to do that by understanding who they are too. And back to the question that Mark brought up, right? Understanding the 9 individuals that work for him now will help him break through on some of that introverts, because there may be 1 or 2 personal aspects that he shares with them that today we don't know about, because we haven't maybe fully explored who they are as a person.
Right.
So to me, a good manager does what's required and does the basics. A good leader takes every one of those basics and brings it up 2, 3, 4, 10 levels. But more importantly, does it through people, right? When we look at, again, to be that good leader, to be successful, to grow those folks underneath you, there should be some selfishness in there too. Because if you're a good manager and you've got 3, 4, 5 people that want to become managers, if you set it up correctly, they're going to make your job a hell of a lot easier if you work with them and do it the right way, because you can delegate, they can grow. You now have to check to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. That can be scary, right? Because you've let go some of the reins and they have to be the ones to do it. But in many ways, you can now explore other aspects of your own growth as you're growing folks that work for you. And a manager, just straight title of manager maybe doesn't really care about that. They just want to get the results. I want to hit this service level, this production number, this many spreadsheets. But if I can do it in different ways to engage my work group, that's the difference.
Right. No, I like the differences that you're making, and one of the things actually that you didn't say, but still has been resonating with me since our conversation this past Saturday. Sorry, I lost track of the days for a second. This past Saturday, where you said, growing from that management to that leadership role, it really involves trusting your people and trusting your intuition, but trusting your people. And to the sense of the word that's right behind me, and I know you guys see it backwards, but that word is delegate. To be able to delegate responsibilities, to be able to delegate tasks that you like you said, you might be the number 1 small package sorter in the building, but being willing to delegate that so that somebody else can practice and get their craft and hone their skill set in that area, and going to an area that you're not as comfortable with, that you may not feel like you're number 1, or that you are in the mentorship position versus the mentoree position. So I agree with everything that you said in regards to the difference between the two. The only other thing I would add is that a manager evolves into a leader, and if a leader slips into a management role, then they have lost some of their evolutional gains, I will say, to go back to that management role. And I've seen this where people have been great leaders, and then they are, whether it's the hazing or challenged with a certain task or have bad news to share or good news to share, it doesn't really matter, where they will devolve from the leadership role and say, well, I'm the manager. And if you ever read John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership, positional leadership is the lowest level of leadership that you can be on. So why go all the way up the scale to experiential leadership, where people trust you because of the experience that you have and the results that you've driven? Why jump all the way back down to level 1, where you're saying, this is my title, you will respect the title? I feel like in that point, you have actually lost as a leader, and are now relying on less meaningful connections in order to drive your team and hopefully promote some people within your organization.
Yeah, I mean, very rarely, and we talked about this this was probably the premise of our last episode together, was that, when I'm the boss and you're going to do it because I'm the boss is the absolute least effective way from a style, technique, and approach standpoint. I will say this, and your opening line on this segment made me think of something, but when I look back at managers that were not successful in my world that I really thought were going to be, or at least I had hoped they were going to be, I saw two things that jumped in, and these were folks that excelled at their jobs, but then really struggled when they became managers, and they struggled with two aspects of it: delegation and discipline. Not the discipline to do the job, but the fact that they had to discipline people for not doing the job, right? And applying the feedback aspect of it again, and then their lack of delegation because they could do it. Well, I would have a manager that would continually go out on the road and deliver, and he would come back and tell me how he saved the day. I said, "Well, who's been doing your job for the last 4 hours?"
Right.
And he would look defeated, and it's especially from a promoted from within world. It's very easy to go back to that, right? You fall right back to what you know.
Right.
I'll give you one other aspect of it that for the sake of a difference between a manager and a leader, and that's the leaving a legacy of growth. And I think I heard that from a wise man on a recent Intersation called Behind the Grind.
Yes.
You talked about wanting to leave a legacy of growth, right? And that's what a true leader wants to be able to do, right? Because you don't care that you had the best presentation, the best day at the office or whatever. You care that there were 6 people on this, 8 people, 100 people on this broadcast that are now looking at you for additional leadership, or will look for you forever, right? You care about that aspect of it. You don't care about a personal aspect. It's not about you don't care about the title of the row master, right?
Right.
You care about growth, and that's the difference, right? I mean, someone that's just in it for the title or money, they learn very quickly that neither of them are worth their weight in gold.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, I thought I was gonna make millions. I feel like I'm still making the same. When you start, especially when you do the hourly breakdown, like you said earlier, you're like, okay, so there's many times managers have said, "Oh, you make more than I make. I make a certain amount that's kind of guaranteed, but when you add commission and being able to go home and go on vacation and not take a laptop, yeah, you make more than I make."
Yeah, and it came from the chat, right? About especially people that look at the front line the first time, they really don't have a clue, and that's not knocking folks. I mean, they don't understand, and in some ways that's a good thing because there are lots of things that happen from the management level that require integrity and confidentiality that you can't share, right? I mean, again, I'm a young manager. I had somebody come up to me over and over again and complain about a customer service rep in the office. She reeked. The body odor was disturbing. And this woman was absolutely an introvert. I mean, she was the meekest person you would know. And I had to pull her into her office and tell her that her coworkers are saying she smells.
Right. Who wants to be that person?
Right. And I'm young. I'm 22, 23, bringing this woman in at 40, who I'm saying, and it was disturbing, right? She was embarrassed as can be. She was angry, but she realized and she fixed the problem, right? And she never come back and thanked me, but I knew that she felt better about herself because But again, that was a very uncomfortable spot. There was no training, there was no corporate training telling me, how do you talk about this girl that smells up the office?
Right.
If you do it in a way to try to be respectful, and so those are the aspects, and that part of it, people really don't make the connection of the importance of certain aspects that need to be confidential.
Yeah, right. Because they're used to the management of their personal life where you can gossip all day long and you might lose a friend or two, but nobody's going to take your paycheck over it. Especially from the manager perspective, nobody's going to take your paycheck that you thought you were going to be getting that was so big that's not so big from you. So I want to.
On the other side of it, just the one aspect of it, I've had a very gratifying career in management where I've seen people grow. I'm so proud of the folks. I mean, somebody recently asked me in a work situation, what am I most proud of my career? And I didn't name names, but I talked about a dozen people that have worked for me that are now in much higher positions than they were when they first started with me, right? Some of them within the organizations that I worked on with, and some of them outside, right? I didn't talk about a service level or a profit goal or a new product that I helped start. I talked about the people that are successful, right?
Right.
It's a very cliche to use sports, but I do use them. The coaching tree. I'm pretty proud of my coaching tree, that are out there, right? Because of the impact that I've been able to make. So for all the frustrations that come in there, right? I mean, in some ways, I want to make sure that anybody watching this, for the first time and listens to it, go, oh my God, I'm never going to be a manager, right? There are a lot of good aspects of it that are truly rewarding, especially when you see somebody, grow, and you know that you played a little bit of a role in that, or they took some feedback and they changed, like I said, I've moved into different jobs, multiple times, promotional and whatnot. And I remember that email that I got from that woman. I opened up a new building, the biggest one in New England, ran it for 4 years, and then moved on and got promoted. And the best goodbye note I got was from the custodian. He didn't even work for the company. He didn't even work for us. Right?
Wow.
He was a vendor, right? And I got a handwritten note, a page and a half, that honestly I still keep. I could find it today if I needed to, right? Because I made a difference in his life, and quite frankly, I didn't even know I did. I treated him like one of my employees, right?
Right.
I didn't do anything. I didn't go out of my way, at least, but I made a difference in this guy's life, So when you look at the rewards, that to me is the reward of leadership, right? When you can sit there and make a difference, help, and honestly, that's what this entire network that you're working on here is all about, right? You were trying to do that, and in from a leadership standpoint, from a financial standpoint on Monday nights, right? From different things for folks, trying to provide a venue that can make a difference.
Right.
And and a manager makes a goal, a leader makes a difference.
I like these little cliches. I'm writing them down, by the way, when you say them, so that way I have them. But I'll also get them for the replay because I watched the video afterwards. There's actually one thing I want to attest to your leadership. The very first time I met you was very interesting because I was told, hey, the new VP is here. You probably want to get a chance to get in front of him, get to know him, meet him. And I remember we went to lunch the first day I met you, and in that conversation, what you're saying now is still true for back then as well. It wasn't like, okay, so what are the numbers and where's this and where's that? It's like, hey, so tell me about yourself. Like, what is your passion? And so it's funny because back then I was like, oh, I do inspirational speaking. These are the things that I'm interested in. It wasn't about, oh, analytics. And so now here we fast forward years later, and it's like, well, what I told you I was passionate about has grown, and it has been brought more so into the light, I guess. So before it was kind of like a background thing. People that knew me knew, but people who are on the internet did not. Now people who are on the internet do know. And so I just think that really, for what you're saying, I think a lot of people say like these cliches, oh, well, the plan versus the vision and all these different things. And they just say it because it sounds good. But as a person who has personally interacted with you in the professional realm first, before getting to this realm that we're in now, I can say that wholeheartedly, your thoughts on leadership and your approach to leadership that you're speaking of tonight are not just in the perfect situation. This is how you handle leadership. It is actually how you execute leadership with me within our very first interaction. And that's what drove me to say, wow, regardless if I'm a part of this organization or not, this is a person you want to keep in contact with, because their value of people has to do with the person's intrinsic value, not with what they can get from that person simply from the company that they work in. So that's just my hats off to you. I want to give you a little kudos for that. There's one thing Mark Anthony said here. Shout out to the moderators, Billy and Bob, for your time tonight. So it's just thanking you for your time. You're welcome. The first row is It's here, baby. We're here. I can't do it like Cousin Mo or like, I'm sorry, Brother Moses in the chat, but Cousin Mo, I'm here, baby. It's me, top of the world. um, so yeah, I do want to go ahead and begin to wrap because we're 5 over for the time. But for the conversation tonight, I'm going to present this a little differently tonight. What would be 3 takeaways that you would want people who are watching, whether they're watching live or watching via the replay? What would be 3 takeaways that you would want them to take with them from tonight's conversation? And secondly, is there one bonus thing that we didn't get a chance to get to tonight that you would want to give to the people?
Okay. So the first one would be you got to check your own perceptions, right? Looking at yourself, and is your perception your reality, right? And again, sounds very cliched, but I appreciate the feedback that you just gave me because this is me, right? Sometimes it works in the corporate world, sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes it falls flat when someone just doesn't want to listen, or a change is coming in, and a change that we were going to do did not play out the way it's going to be. And I have no problem admitting a mistake, right? But sometimes, what I'm hoping to convey doesn't always come across the right way either. So and if you look at your perception and you look at your reality and you're in a good spot, that's great. But you got to keep validating that. You mentioned an example that, that leader could slide back, right?
Right.
And circumstances have changed. I mean, if you're following in the news this week with Tesla, right? Tesla,
Right.
2 weeks ago, makes this groundbreaking aspect and is not going to have any stores to sell their cars. Everybody wants to buy it online, according to Elon Musk. Right?
Right.
Every salesperson in the country heard it online. They didn't hear it from him. They found out that they're shutting down every store via the web.
Right.
Now, flash forward 2 weeks, and it's never mind.
Just kidding.
Less than half the stores are going to close, and maybe only a third of the stores are going to close.
Right.
So in that instance, there's someone that needs to do some validation, right? Because whatever vision they may have had, it's starting to click the other way.
Right.
The second aspect is, and this goes to everybody on this call, and really more importantly for the folks that work for them, it's okay not to be a manager. I mean, you're better off finding the right role in the company that you're in or another company if it's not for you, but you still can add value in your own way and everything else. But going into a role that's not the right fit for anybody ends up making it miserable for them and their work group more than likely too. And then I guess the third tip would be, or the third solution would be about asking the right questions, right? So if you're on this, again, you're in a leadership role, and folks want to become and jump into that leadership role in your organization or working directly for you, make sure you ask the right questions to help them develop the answers, right? You do not want to be the answer man or the answer woman. You can't be, right? Because if you're always the one answering the questions, they're not growing, they're not delegating, right? And then the same deep dive that I started with, do you know your perception and your reality? Work with them to understand this. Why do they want to become that manager, right? Again, it's easy. That frontline manager's job is easy. Well, maybe not as easy as you think.
Right. And then lastly, then the bonus. What do you got that we didn't get to tonight that you would want to share?
I'd ask you to flip up one more logo for me.
All right. Let me. It's funny. I forgot that I had that logo up, but I'm actually glad that I gave you a bonus thing because I would have forgot to flip the logo up. Let's see.
All right, so we've got one more logo up there with the hidden message. I'll give a quick second. Does anybody see something else in that logo? And if you haven't guessed by now, the $69 billion company that I worked for 28 years, you're looking at it. And one of the great things about FedEx was and Fred Smith is still the CEO, the founder today, 74 years old and still going strong. But he's always had a vision of always pushing forward. And for the sake of leadership, that conversion of management into leadership requires you to always push forward. You'll make mistakes. Billy's made them. I've made them. But you push forward. You don't look back. You learn from the mistakes. Don't make them again if you can, but you always push forward. So if you look closely between the E and the X in orange, there is an arrow pointing forward. In the negative space, it's in the white. It's funny, when I first put that out to my kids, they were toddlers. So every time we saw a truck for about 5 years, I heard FedEx arrow, FedEx arrow. So from my perspective, I close with that of pushing forward, because managers can become leaders, right? And you learn the business, but it's really all about managing people, and working with people. And again, don't get any of this wrong. You have to have results, but you'll get results by by really becoming a great leader in managing people. So you can drop the logo, Bill. It's my last one of the night. Right?
All right. All right. No, I like that. And it's funny. So one would think that was planned. I promise that was not planned. I planned to have the logo up, and we actually plan to go on it later in the conversation. However, that just worked out as the bonus. So I'm glad that worked out. Push forward. So first, I want to thank you, Bob, for being on and providing excellent information. Second Intersation, hats off to you if I was wearing one. But I definitely appreciate you for coming on, spending time on the first row, really as also spending time in the first row as a viewer as well. I'm very grateful for your viewership and for your feedback that you give in regards to the shows that you do watch. There's really, it's funny because there's a lot of overlap in the tools that I came up with for the first row. So for those who have watched Intersations before, I like to do something towards the end of the Intersation or at the end of the Intersation called Tools for the First Row. So why the network's name is First Row is, number one, my last name is Rowe, W-R-O-E. But it's actually a play on words. When I was younger, I actually had a business mentor who taught me that the people who sit on the first row, they make the most money and they get the most information. And that is because there is nothing distracting them between the person giving the information and their ability to receive it. So that's how First Row was actually born, our birth into cyberspace. For those who watch on a regular basis, it should not be new to you now why we call it the first row. We reserve your seat on the first row every week, Tuesday, Mondays, Wednesdays, whatever day we have content. That is when you have a first row seat into growth, into inspiration, and into things that hopefully will shape, mold, and change your life. So with that, when I was creating this particular content, and as Bob and I actually, because we kind of both were working on creating it, I always write down a couple of tools that help me clarify what I want the content to be. And so I call those tools for the first row. Since you're sitting on the first row, I'm going to give you those tools tonight. If you've got a pen, you might want to write them down. If not, if you're watching the replay, you might want to pause, go get a pen. So the very first tool, and it's funny because it's your third third tool our third takeaway that you had, Bob, was ask yourself honest and direct questions. And I didn't even, thinking about this tool, I didn't go into asking those honest and direct questions to the people who you want to see promote if you're in a management position already, but really asking yourself the honest and direct questions. Is leadership for me? Really, and I'm changing it from management to leadership because I believe in leadership being more impactful. Is leadership for me? Am I willing to do the work that's necessary within myself to get to the place where I can be a healthy leader for my team? And I think that goes all the way back to the very beginning of this conversation, this Intersation, where we were talking about that perception versus reality. It's easy to sit on the sidelines and dictate how you would have done whatever in the game differently to win the game. But when you're in the driver's seat, when people are coming to you for leadership, then there's some skin in the game that you have. Now, if you get hit, or if somebody comes for the ball and you're the one carrying the ball, now you risk actually being tackled. So you may not have all that analysis mindset to say, oh, well, there was a zig and a zag that you could have made instead of the zag and the zig. So that's the very first aspect. The first tool is really ask yourself honest and direct questions so that you can really find out if leadership is something that you want to be into. Because you might find, if you're honest with yourself, you're not willing to pick up your phone on the weekends. Maybe you're prioritizing, hey, when I'm with my family, I'm with my family, and there's no emergency greater than that. If that's the case, leadership may not be for you, because there may be times that you're going to be called upon where your team needs you. And though you have a home team that also needs you, you might have to be able to take that time, a little bit of that time away from that home team to pour back into your work team. So that's the first tool. The second tool that I came up with in regards to IMFM was get to know the behind the scenes, and we actually touched a little bit on this, Bob, within the Intersation. But I think it's so important to get to know the behind the scenes. And there's different methods and strategies you can use to get to know what's behind the scenes to an extent, because like Bob said, there are things that are confidential that you just won't know. But what I have learned is that to get a good view of that behind the scenes, you can ask questions about general situations and circumstances. So where you're not asking them to disclose, oh, well, can you tell me which employee does this? Or can you give me enough general information so that I can identify which employee you're talking about? But if you're saying, if I go to an HR manager and I say, can you tell me some of the struggles that you experience in your role that make your job somewhat frustrating and feel at times less fulfilling? Now that person can open up about the behind the scenes, about the difficulties that they're having in their role, without jeopardizing confidentiality. So get to know a little bit about the behind the scenes, because it's really within the behind the scenes where really the work takes place. It's no different than when I talk to people about having a YouTube channel. They say, oh, I want to create a YouTube channel. Okay, great. I mean, if I have the time and the bandwidth, I'll even help you create your YouTube channel. I don't have any problem doing that. However, then you find out that, oh, well, it's not just to simply click and record on your cell phone and then all of a sudden you have video. Like, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the background behind the scenes that I feel like if people have the access to know, then they're a little more like, okay, do I want to pay to be able to go live on YouTube and have to do all this work in order to make that live content? Then people start saying, I don't want a YouTube channel. I just want to be able to chat in the chat. And that's where I feel like I want to be on YouTube at. So get to know the behind the scenes is the second tool. The third one is commit to success. And this is very fascinating, because my reflection on this is not simply in the state of success as we would see it as, oh, I'm successful, I'm doing the best that I can possibly do, I'm achieving results. Committing to success is, number one, you're going to have to push yourself some days. I will tell you, this week, I am pushing myself on the first row. It's daylight savings time, so I lost an hour of sleep on the weekend, suffered from insomnia over the weekend, and there is live content on the first row every day this week except for Saturday and Sunday. So I'm 5 days of live content, 4 of them in which I will be a part of. But I'm pushing myself because there's a vision that I have that I want to impart to those who are viewing, to those who also produce content on the channel. I want to impart that vision, and part of imparting that vision is being willing to do the work that is necessary to make content come into fruition. So that's the first half of that, committing to success. The other half of that is commit to success, and it's weird because it's not in the leadership component, but it's commit to success. And that means also being able to identify that even if you've gotten into a management or leadership position, if you are in over your head to get the help that you need, but even further, if you're in a leadership position or a management position and you have found that is not for you, commit to being able to take that step back. Because there is nothing more reckless for your team and or for you in your career or you and your personal relationships, it doesn't matter if it's professional or personal, is to be in a leadership role when your heart is not in it and you don't have the best interest of your team, even in the forefront of your mind. So that's what I mean by commit to success. Commit to being willing to do the work that's necessary to be successful as a leader. That's self-development, enrichment, things along those lines, mentorship. But then the other side of that is if you find out that it's not for you, commit to the success of your team and be willing to take the step back and take the step down and swallow your pride. Maybe you'll lose that stature that you gained, that respect that you gained. Maybe you'll suffer from some embarrassment, but overall, those are minor costs to the greater good of what a leader is supposed to be to their people. And then fourth and the final tool in regards to IMFM is leaders should be authentic and they should be organic. And this goes back to Mark Anthony's comment about how do I click on and off that introvert and extrovert switch. Really, a leader should be authentic to who they are. If we in our everyday lives can kind of have a good sense for when somebody is not being genuine, imagine and the impact that has personally for us. Like there's people I won't interact with because I'm like, no, you're fake, and I'm not a fake person, so I can't not tell you that I know you're fake, because then I'd be being fake. If that's in my personal life, imagine when you're in the corporate world, what that inauthenticity is, or the impact that inauthenticity has on your relationship with your subordinates and or people who are in leadership roles above you. That is why authenticity is very important. And then organic is also important. And organic is really about getting exposure I would say getting exposure pre-leadership, pre-management, being able to put yourself in the right conversations and within the right network. So that way, when the opportunity for leadership arrives, or when the opportunity for management arrives, your name is already circulating in the proper channels in order to be brought to the table. So those are the tools. Really quick, I'm going to go over them again. The first one is ask yourself honest and direct questions. 2 is get to know the behind the scenes. 3 is commit to success. And 4 is leaders should be authentic, and really it should happen organically. So with that, I want to just say really quick, looks like Carolyn says, I enjoyed you there first time, Bob, and this time was very valuable as well. Oh, she enjoyed you the first time, and this time was very valuable as well. Aunt Jackson YT, just pray. Praise. All right. Amen. And then lastly but not least, I just want to let you guys know, we actually, like I said, this week we have 5 live shows. The upcoming shows for the remainder of the week, on Wednesday, we're going to have the Wednesday Word. That will be how to build a healthy life story. That is on tomorrow, March 13th at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The second thing we have is actually a bonus Intersation this week, which will be on addressing the root causes of behaviors, and that is with Jennifer Chambers. For those who caught the Intersation on resolving mommy and daddy issues, she is the one who said trauma-based traditions. I'm telling you, you guys might want to watch that one. That will be on Thursday, March 14th at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then actually we are launching a new content, collaborative content this week called The Game, How to Thrive in Corporate America. And that will be with Antoine Wade of Black Heights and myself to represent the first row. The topic will actually be on becoming irreplaceable in today's workplace. That will be Friday, March 15th at 7 p.m. So it's a busy week this week on the first row. So if you guys want to tune in, catch a replay, either way, I'm happy that you guys are engaging with the content. For those who are watching live, if you have not already, please click the like and subscribe button if you have not subscribed yet. Definitely want to remind you guys that we are ticking to, let's see, today is the 12th. So we have 19 more days left for the special on Modern Day Mentor. That there was an extended offer to pre-order the book before it is released. You can save a little bit of money on the book. The book will be autographed for you. You will need to email Modern Day Mentor, and that's at firstrow.com. Send that email. We will send you back a order form, and when you send in your payment, please be sure to put in the promo code First Row, 1STWROE. Other than that, also, we do still have topics at firstrow.com. If you're interested in hearing about a topic on the First Row that we haven't covered yet, or that you would like us to cover in more depth, feel free to send an email to topics@firstrow.com. Somebody will look at that, and if we use your topic, we will definitely let you know when it will be posted live, and we'll also shout you out in the video. Other than that, I thank you guys for tuning in tonight. It's always a pleasure, Bob. I want to thank you again for coming on and sharing your time and giving your knowledge to the people. But if there's anything that you guys need, please do not hesitate to reach out to the First Row. We're always happy to engage with you guys. For those watching the replay, we're happy to engage with you on the comments for the first week of the video. After the first week comes on, we move on to the next week so that we can engage with those comments on those videos. But other than that, if you like this video, please share it. If you share it, please like it. We're always happy to engage with you in the comments and in the live chat if you're here live. Until the next time that we see you, we look forward to seeing you on the First Row. One love, peace, and God bless.